Before we get into the meat of the sermon today, I want to make two comments. One is that I feel like over the last 2 months or so, there's been more questions, more feedback, and more debate about sermons with me, and that's great. That's what I yearn for in community, is that I know that in this room, well, most of you are older than I am, but on top of that, the combined wisdom of this room is much greater than mine. So when we engage in debates and conversations and disagreements about the sermon, I think that's where the richness of this work lies. And so please don't stop. More of that would be great. So if you disagree or you dislike or you think a premise is wrong, let's talk. It can sometimes be an informal conversation. Happy to come visit you. We'll have discussion times too coming up in the fall. So I hope you'll engage with that. The second thing is, I'm about to talk about joy, but I feel like I am a little bit ill-equipped to deal with joy. Like yesterday, I had a really grumpy day. And so I don't think I'm necessarily a harbinger of joy all the time. So keep that in mind as I'm talking about this. This, for me, is an ongoing discovery. So take that for what you will. This is the second week of Sermon by Request. And what was written on the little card that came into the bucket was Capturing Joy. And I thought that was a fantastic title. Partly because I kind of disagreed with the title, like Capturing Joy. That sounded strange to me. And the first image that came to mind was Pokemon Go. So now I hear by your reactions there's at least a few people who know what's going on here. So there's this game that has started called Pokemon Go. And let me give you a rundown for it for those of you who aren't familiar. So the premise of Pokemon is that you are a trainer, and you go out and you collect these little mystical creatures called Pokemon. And these Pokemon come in all sorts of different forms. There's 150 different Pokemon. And these Pokemon can all be classed based on their type. So there are fire Pokemon, there are water Pokemon, there are electrical ones. There's I think about 8 or 9 different classes of Pokemon. And I know this because I used to play Pokemon like about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So, mid-university playing Pokemon. So this Pokemon thing has, it's been around for a while, but it just started to surge again because they added a new feature. And that was you could play Pokemon on the streets of your own city or town. So using a cell phone, they could figure out exactly where you were on the world using GPS coordinates. So they could tell, for example, that you were walking down Willow Street or Chemainus Road. And then what they would do is they would put these little figures, these little Pokemon on your map. And all of a sudden, as you're looking through your screen, a Pokemon would appear, as if there was this little Pikachu or this little Squirtle in the middle of a field that you were walking through. And you would see it on your screen. So this is an example. So this person's walking in the map. And then all of a sudden, this little rat-a-tat appears like it would on a park. And you throw Pokemon balls at it, and eventually, you capture it into this little Pokeball. It's really catchy music, huh? And now you have this rat-a-tat creature. Right? And so your goal is to go around and catch 150 of these things. It takes a long time. I think Brooklyn. You have Pokemon Go, exactly, yeah. So how many Pokemon do you have? How many Pokemon do you have? Do you know? You have 20. So you have, there's 150, 4 of them are mythical, so you'll never catch those. But you have 144 to go, or 124 to go. Ooh, lots of work to do. And so you get them, and you can evolve these creatures. So that rat, I think, evolves, and the pigeon evolves, and they all evolve into other things. But the idea is that you have it, and then you own it, and then you never need to worry about it again. I don't think that's the way joy works at all. I don't think we can capture joy, like, haha, I've got it, and then we never need to worry about it again. Look how many self-help books have been written about trying to be happy or trying to be joyful. Ultimately, I think you read one, it works for a bit, and then you're left longing for more. So I spent a lot of time trying to think, well, what is the difference between joy and happiness and pleasure? There's got to be some sort of difference between those ones. And what I really wanted to find was that joy was rooted in some deep something or other, that happiness was different from happiness and was different from pleasure. And that's not what I found. If you look through all the definitions of joy, they all seem to have some sort of element of happiness and pleasure in them in some way or another. And so what I realized is that maybe we're looking at something else. We can feel joy and happiness and pleasure from all sorts of different things. But where my primary concern, and where we'll spend the rest of the day, the rest of the topic, is in rooting that joy in something deep. So we can get joy from all sorts of things, but what I'm interested in is the joy that we can root deeply in something beyond ourselves and beyond our community. So to do this, a kind of a visual representation. So I have a flower pot here, and I have some radish seeds. Now, I'm going to plant one of these radish seeds in this pot. The flower pot is empty, nothing in it. It's not a magic trick, don't worry. That would be terrible. So we can get our joy from all sorts of different things. One of the ways we get joy is through stuff, like a new pair of shoes, or a new barbecue, or a new television, or a new electronic gadget, or a new tool, or a new purse, or anyone else have a guilty pleasure they want to admit to? We can get our joy from all sorts of stuff. Yeah? Fishing tackle, yeah? Anyone else? Paintings, yeah? So you can accumulate stuff. I heard the other day that the average North American has 300,000 things. That's a crazy number. Like, think about your house. How many things do you have in your house? So count every fork, every knife, every book, every 300,000 things. I wonder where we try and get our happiness from, our joy from. We can try to get our joy from entertainment, cards, movies, whatever that might be for you. Sports, yeah. So any sort of entertainment. If you like going to the movies, or you like watching YouTube, or you like playing a good game of bridge, those are all things that you can get joy from. And absolutely, why shouldn't you get joy from those things? And we can get joy from, I could even use this, the piggy bank. We try to get joy from our money, as if our money will make us happy, right? And the ironic thing about money, I'm learning, is that when you get a little bit of money, then you realize it's not enough money, and then you want some more. And you can also, this is my MDiv degree, you can get happiness from accomplishments too, right? Something you've done, something you've created, something you've built, some award you've won. Absolutely. There's lots of joy from that. But when you go, where did the seed go? When you plant the seed in here, well, you get the idea. You plant the seed in here. The seed will start to grow, right? It'll germinate, and you can take really good, rich soil, And you can plant a seed in this. And when the seed eventually germinates and looks to put roots down, it will find something that's, well, much more suitable to growing. So for the rest of our time together, I want to think about what is in the soil. Now, I'm not going to break it down into nitrogen and carbon, but what gives us fruitful joy? There's a couple of different ideas here. What makes up the soil that nurtures joy? I think one of the things is practice. For as long as Christianity has been around, there have been practices that people have used to center themselves in God. Those practices have taken all different forms. There's the practice of doing dishes or mopping a floor. Doing dishes and mopping a floor has been around for probably as long as people have decided to live indoors. And if you're like me, I'm often really grumpy when I do the dishes. But one of the best practices you can do is turn those normal chores, those things that have to get done, like weeding the garden, turn it into prayer. And there are other practices. About this time last year, we tried doing spiritual practice together. You'll remember at one point we were all sitting around coloring together, coloring a mandala. So sometimes it's creating a mandala or coloring one in. Sometimes it's taking 10 minutes or an hour at the beginning of each day just to be in silence. And when we root ourselves in the one, the divine, the one who is, I am, I think we find joy. We can find joy in community. Because I think community is one expression of God. Now, when I say community, I'm not just talking about some sort of like, hey, how's the weather conversation. But if you've ever been in a friendship or a relationship where you can just open up with somebody, like really tell someone how you are doing, what your biggest fears are, and where your biggest hopes lie, I think there's joy that bubbles up from that. And sometimes it's tough, and it's tough to make that kind of community, but it's the richest kind. And we have the possibility of making that here at Chemainus United, and we see it bubble up from time to time, what really strong community looks like. And we can find our joy in thanksgiving. At the beginning of the service, we ask you, well, what are you grateful for? What are you celebrating? Maybe we should say, what are you thankful for? Because really, I think joy is rooted in good thanksgiving. This is a video. This is a young girl. She wakes up every morning, stands on her bathroom counter, and says all the things that she's thankful for.
Look, I can be a shark. Now, my whole house is great. I can do anything good. I like my school. I like anything. I like my dad. I like my cousins. I like my aunts. I like my Allisons. I like my mom. I like my sisters. I like my dad. I like my hair. I like my haircuts. I like my pajamas. I like my stuff. I like my rooms. I like my whole house. My whole house is great. I can do anything good. Yeah. I can do anything good. Better than anyone. Better than anyone.
And so what strikes me is that she's just finding so much joy in all of the things around her. She doesn't, I don't think, need 300,000 things. Just a sense of, man, it is good to be alive. I think we can also find our joy in the right set of circumstances in Scripture and in worship. There's this great story in the book of Acts where the Apostle Paul finds himself in a dungeon. He's been arrested for proclaiming the word, and he finds himself at midnight in a prison. And what is so remarkable about the story is that it just says that he's singing and rejoicing. No stuff, no entertainment, just a sense of awe and beauty. And finally, I think we can find joy in service. I heard this great story from camp. I wasn't a part of it, but it stuck with me for a long time. When I was learning how to be a camp counselor, they would tell this story to inspire us about what it means to be in service to one another. At camp, there was this maintenance guy who was called upon to figure out what was wrong with the septic tank. So he went down to the septic tank and he was looking about and opened it up. And at one point in this ordeal, he fell into the septic tank. I can't imagine a worse place to fall into. Like, I really can't. That sounds terrible. So he got out and he ripped off his clothes and he went to have the longest shower of his life. When he got out of the shower, which I can only imagine must have been a long time, there, folded neatly beside where he was showering, were his clothes that had been taken, cleaned, dried, and left for him to put back on. No one knows who did this. There were the clothes waiting for him. So I hope that we can find our joy in service, just like we might find it in Scripture, in worship, in community, and in practice. Amen.